Now I'm live. I did the countdown and everything, and I was not even live. So, welcome, y'all. Welcome to another live discussion of Stamped from the Beginning by Dr. Ibram X. Kendi. I'm going to give a couple seconds for people to come on in. I haven't shared it on Instagram yet. So, just give me a minute to do that, and then I'm going to pull up some resources and we'll get started. And I want to encourage y'all to comment. Commenting helps me get comfortable. It helps me relax and get rid of my shyness, my nerves. I know I do this a lot, but it's not easy. And, I can't see y'all, but y'all can see me, and it just freaks me out. So comment, let me know who you are, where you're from. Also, what led you to watch this stream? Did you just stumble upon it, or did you click it because of the title and the discussion topics? Let me know. And again, I'm still sharing on Instagram, so we'll get started. We'll get started really soon. Okay. I just need to, I'm not going to be able to share it everywhere. Okay, I think that's enough. I'm sorry, I should have had this done. Should have had this done. Oh, okay. So got it on Instagram on one page. Now I gotta put it on the other page. Okay. Now it's on the other page. Let me get my notes together. Let me get my notes together. I didn't want to push it back too far. But sometimes it happens like that. So I see more people are coming in. I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jessica, as you guys can see right here. And today is a continued discussion of Ibram X. Kendi's book, Stamped from the Beginning. I've been discussing this book online for about 3.5 months now. And if you are new to these discussions, if you've never even knew that I was doing this, I want to explain really quickly why and what the goal is, how I was inspired and what the goal is. So this summer, well, actually, I left blogging. I took a little hiatus when I got pregnant the first time with my first son. I took a little break, and by the time I got ready to start blogging again, I found out I was pregnant with my second child. And so I thought I was done. I thought I was completely done with blogging. I thought it was a thing of the past, like it was great while it lasted. And then I had something to happen in my life spiritually, where God literally told me that, no, Jessica, blogging, this is part of what you're supposed to do. I've talked about these before, so I won't go too into detail. But once I got that word from God, if you will, I knew that when I came back that it couldn't be just about me and my life and, my thoughts and my opinions. It needed to be glorifying to God first and foremost. And it needed to be a way for people to get connected with God in a meaningful, in a deeper way. So I'm like, okay, let's do it. And then 2020 happened. You had the murder of George Floyd, the murder of Breonna Taylor. And now I found myself in this really weird emotional space on top of dealing with COVID. And it ultimately led me to this book. It led me to this book because you know, now I'm back into the blogging game because of my spiritual journey. So how was I able to, or I'm still asking myself this question. Now I'm like, how do I square my faith with the reality of being Black and living in America right now in 2020? I started to have that type of crisis, that type of really, it was really a rough time. It was a rough period. So I figured that, you know what, I can do my part. I can share what Black people are going through, what we've been going through. I can share it. I can share it from a perspective of someone who believes in Christ, who tries to follow Christ. And I can also connect with people who have issues with Christianity itself, because you will find that a lot of people who are quote unquote woke and who do a lot of advocacy work and do a lot of research into the Black community, the culture, particularly during slavery, you'll find that a lot of those people don't really vibe with Jesus, right? And so this book dives into their history. And so I felt like it was a way to, you know, put both worlds into the middle and have a real conversation about how we got here as a country and what are we supposed to do with it if we believe in Jesus Christ and if we try to follow him. So that's how I got there. That's a very, very condensed, jumbled up version. I hope I made sense, but I just want to explain to you why these topics have been what they are. They're actually coming from this book, and I'm just choosing what I feel like are the more important ones or the things to take note of. I'm choosing those. My light went out. I'm choosing those to go a little deeper, you know, a little deep dive. So while I fix my light, if y'all haven't already, go ahead and like this video, share it, leave a comment, let me know who you are. Let me know what you think about that. What do you think about those things that I said as it relates to the woke community and Christianity? Do you have any thoughts? I'm about to fix my light. Okay, and we're back. Yeah, so let me know what your thoughts are. If you don't already, go ahead and follow me on Instagram at Jessica Simeon Lofton. You can also follow, I guess you could say it's my blog. Instagram is really focused with this type of material. It's unlearning.life on Instagram. And we will go ahead and get into it. Make sure y'all do that for me. I would really appreciate it. When you share these videos, these live streams, when you share it, when you comment, it helps other people to see it too. And that's the goal of this, to have this conversation, to let it spread to people who may not, you know, be thinking about it, who may have never even heard of some of these things. So if you do that, if you could do that, I would greatly appreciate it. And so we're going to start with the end of chapter 12. So my last stream, we ended on the American Bible Society. And if you have the book, it is on page, let's see. It's on page 153. 153. Oh, Teresa. Okay, so Teresa says, I was just watching a live from someone in the woke community, and it was very angry towards Black Christians. That is so interesting. It's so interesting because it's a very controversial topic that should not be controversial, given how many of us Black folks are Christian. It should be something that we're always talking about. And I mentioned this in a prior stream about some things that I noticed in the woke community and these different patterns in the way that I viewed people in the woke community. But when I started to do some investigating, honestly, when I started with this book, I began to have some of those same feelings. And I think it's very important that I'm open and transparent about this, because, you know, depending on where you know me from, when you met me, you could have heard either message. You could have heard me being super, super Jesus, Or you could have heard me saying the church got to figure this out, so I have to be transparent and share that I had some of those same feelings. And I mean, I went so far as to call a meeting with my pastor, to talk about a lot of things, but that dealt with, why are some of the things happening? Why are they happening? And we profess to be followers of Jesus. And why aren't we talking about this? Why are we not trying to bridge this gap if we're supposed to be bringing people into the kingdom? And we know that the whole slavery, American history is a barrier and a blockage. Then we need to be trying to figure out what's going on there and how can we address it and deal with it so that those people can be brought to Christ. But what I found is that we say that and we mean it to the degree in which we're comfortable. And, I've always kind of like, I bring up my husband a lot in these streams because when we met, we came from two different ends of the spectrum as it related to wokeness and as it related to spirituality. And I've been in the church my entire life. I was very, very active in the last church that I was a part of. And I just wrote off a lot of what he said. I mean, I even remember thinking like, ooh, can we even get married? Because I don't know if he could be saying this kind of stuff. And, I was really like concerned about his viewpoint. And now I find myself, after learning more of America's history, after learning more of Christianity and its origins in America, I'm like, ooh, do we even need to be doing this? And so you go through this whole mental thing, but a lot of people, a lot of Black Christians in particular, don't want to go there because this is all we know. This is everything we've ever known, everything we've ever been taught. And so, you were brought up to not question it. You were brought up not to look into things. And that is directly counter to scripture. God tells us, we are supposed to, we're supposed to be knowledgeable. We perish for a lack of knowledge. I think the scripture goes like that. And so for us to never question it and to have a kind of blind faith is almost dangerous in some ways. And I think it also hinders growth spiritually and personally, because personally counts too, because it all is, they're directly affected and connected to one another. So those are my immediate thoughts on what you said, just looking at it, because I can imagine how that went. And I'm not on the extreme woke end, but I'm a little woke. And so I get it. But that is actually something that once I'm done or we're done going into this book and all the different details with this book, that's something that we're actually going to touch on next. The next book that I'll be discussing is directly dealing with the church and racism. And so hopefully, Teresa, you will hang with me until then so you can get into that discussion and share it with whoever did that live. But thank you for leaving your comment. I appreciate it. As I said, I'm starting with the end of chapter 12, about page 153, and it's talking about the American Colonization Society. So if you don't know, there was a group that basically formed to send Black people back to Africa. They were used up now. They were free. Some of them were free. And they felt like the free Blacks were causing problems, in society, and particularly with the Blacks that were still enslaved. So, there began to be a little tension. And so white folks were like, look, we got to send them back to Africa. And it's so interesting to me. And you can see the connection today with how government, white people, the powers that be, how they just kind of make decisions about what to do with Black folks. I have noticed that a lot within the history from, first of all, you come into Africa telling us, that you finna save us, and then we end up on a slave ship and enslaved for all these years. Then you feel like you can say, oh, now that you're free, you need to go to Africa And now if you look at it now, how the government is pushing the vaccine. And I'm not going to go all into that, but it's just like, okay, yeah, we get it. Black people are disproportionately affected by COVID, but let's look at why we're disproportionately affected and how these things have always existed. And so why the rush to tell us to take this vaccine? You telling LeBron he needs to take it on camera. You're doing all this stuff. You're paying HBCUs to get people to take it. Where is this energy for all the problems that led us here to be disproportionately affected anyway? So it's just like if you know the history, if you've seen some of the streams, you see like Black people have always been seen as a product, as a pawn, as a prop. And we have to take ownership of ourselves. And we can only do that when we know what we're up against, where we've been, what our history and our legacy is, so that we can be empowered and do what needs to be done to get this stuff right. But yeah, so I don't know. Oh, I know how I got there. But yeah, so the Colonization Society is like, look, y'all need to go back to Africa. And Black folks were like, hold up, you told us Africa was this, and that. I don't want to go there. That's not, no. So Black people had consumed these racist ideas and this very stereotypical view or mental picture of Africa, though many of them had not ever been there. They were only going off of what they were told. And so now they're looking at like, wait, you trying to send me back there? I ain't going back there. And so this society was formed to make this effort to have legal gain in that area and in that campaign to get Black people to go back to Africa, to colonize Africa. And so from there, they had one of the people, he was actually the secretary of the organization. He believed that, like, okay, we need them to go back to Africa. And we've converted them to Christianity. We've given them we've given them religion. They don't have any, they're not practicing their African spirituality. We've given them their savior, and their savior rewards them for being submissive to their masters, who are us. So all we have to do, if we want to get them to go back to Africa, we need to put God in it. So that's how the American Bible Society was born. Now, of course, I'm paraphrasing. I was not there when that conversation was had. I'm paraphrasing based off the information in the book. The American Bible Society was born out of that. And so you'll see a theme. And I know it seems like I've been picking on Christianity a lot, and I have, because it's just like all these issues that I've always had with the church. And when I say church, I mean the body of Christ, the people who profess to be Christians. All the issues that I've ever had with Christianity and all the things that I've ever felt that felt off, like it didn't make sense to me, I could never understand it, I'm getting my answers. And I'm seeing that, Jessica, you're not crazy. Them woke people, they're not crazy. They're not crazy. This is how it was meant to be that way. And so that has inspired me to develop my own relationship and understanding of God, just simply because I don't know that we can take the white supremacy out of Christianity at this point. I think the damage has been done, and because of the added issue of racism and how it plays a role in it all, people ain't never gonna confront it like they need to. So I think Christianity, and I know like some of my church people, especially if you went to church with me, you're not gonna like it, and you probably gonna have your feelings hurt when I say it, but I feel like Christianity is kind of a lost cause until the body of Christ gets this right. And it's all of our responsibility. It's not just white folks, because Black people have consumed these ideas, and none of us were around at that time, so we can only do what we can do right now. And the best way to do that is to talk about these issues, bring them to the forefront so we can have an open discussion and figure out where to go from here. And I know I'm not crazy, and I know I'm not wrong about that, because I went to my very first and the only church conference that I've ever been to. The curriculum for the conference, basically it said, Christianity has a branding issue. And so me, because I'm a marketing and branding expert, I'm like, it does, but it has a branding issue, because of Christians, not because the boss didn't tell us what to do. And so when you say that it has a branding problem and not address the problems, it's not just that people are liars, or that the pastor got somebody pregnant, or the first lady is messy. It ain't just those things that keep people from wanting to be in church. It's so much bigger than it. It's knowing that you told Black folks they couldn't be Christians. Then you realize for those who were, it was making them more submissive. So you thought, aha, let's convert them and make them more submissive. And then when you look at theology in church and how everything is about serving, and you get guilt tripped into serving, and all these language and the way that we handle church is a direct reflection. So people say, oh, the word was perverted by people, and it was, but the perversion is still going on. It's just taking on different forms, just like racism. So we got to get this right. We got to figure it out. And you cannot figure it out if you're not talking about it. You cannot be afraid to talk about those things. So that is how the Bible Society came about. And so they contracted this, and I have links to this. Let me actually put the links here so that you'll be able to, I'm gonna put the links in the comments or probably the description box so that you can see where I'm getting my information from outside of the book. Give me just a second, because I got all my I got all my White Jesus notes. I made them last night. I got all the links together. So give me just a quick second to pull them up and show you this for yourself, especially if you don't have the book. All right. So yeah, so the Bible Society contracted an artist, and this artist, he was famous for advertising. That was his thing. He did advertising. The secretary, his name was Ralph Gurley. You can look him up, Ralph Gurley. He said that, we have to, if we're going to get people to be part of our cause, then we need to make this about God. We have to center it around spirituality. My computer screen is really widescreen, so I'm gonna make sure I zoom this up pretty good. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So can y'all see that? Is that big enough? I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. Hopefully that's good. Okay. So Ralph Gurley, he decided, we need to make this connected to spirituality. It has to be connected to that. I'm gonna wipe my screen out. It has to be connected to Christianity, because Black people are very spiritual. They're very spiritual. They're very forgiving. So we got to tell them that their Heavenly Father wants them to do this. And so they put together like these pamphlets, and they made Jesus white. We know that it is impossible for Jesus to be white just because of where he was from, his culture. There's no way he was white. But they used advertisements. They used this image. It became known as the head of Christ. I'm going to pull it up for y'all in just a second. They used that to create a white Jesus-centered national identity. So remember, they felt like this was a sin in other cases. They thought that it was a trick. But they were like, no, we're going to mass produce Jesus. It became a marketing campaign for Jesus to be white and for everyone to see him as white. Prior to this, there was no images of Jesus, and that was on purpose. You know, nobody really focused on what he looked like. This came about all as a plot to really uphold white supremacy. And you can see this excerpt from this interview. The title of the interview is "Color of Christ: A Story of Race and Religion in America." And as you can see here, part of the reason why they chose to make Jesus white but it was all for the same cause. But part of it is that it wasn't making sense, right? And as you can see, hey, look, service is good, service is godly, so your service is good. And then they're like, Jesus is your master. You have to follow his lead. You have to do what he tells you to do. But then when the slaves would think about it, they'd be like, okay, well, if Jesus is my master, then my slave owner can't only be my master, and Jesus is the most powerful. So I have a master above the master. Hello, somebody. And that means that you got to do what Jesus said. And so there was this, like, okay, it's not adding up. And that's when the campaign began for Jesus to be white. And I want you to ask yourself, how do you view Jesus yourself? I've never viewed him as looking like me. I've always had a white Jesus in my mind, because that's what I remember seeing. Like, let me pull up the head of Christ. I'm going to pull that up so I can bring it into context. I'm going to just use this one. Okay, so this picture here of Christ, that's the one. Do you recognize that picture? Have you seen it before? That's what I always associated. How I always associated Jesus as looking. Even though he couldn't have been white with blue eyes, even though that I subconsciously, I can't speak for anybody else, but I subconsciously saw what I'm showing here, the head of Christ. So people, the advertisement, the marketing campaign was working, because people were starting to associate Jesus with whiteness. And though I'm not getting into it right now in this book, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to do that in the next book. You can see how that is still very prevalent now, just in the way church culture is. That it's very, if you're not in a hole in the wall church, I don't mean no disrespect, but if you're not in a hole in the wall church where everybody related, and it's all black folks, if you're not in one of those churches and you're in a more modern church, you will notice the whitewashing of church culture. I grew up in a traditionally black church, a black missionary Baptist church, and then I most recently was attending a church that had no color, so to speak. And there is a very, very distinct whitewashing of everything. So I don't want y'all to think that this is old. I hope that you can, that this puts something on your mind and you can begin to see the dots connect. That this was on purpose back then, and it has been upheld today. Partly because we don't talk about it. But this was on purpose, and this is a lot of people have an issue with the white Jesus. And honestly, you know, that issue is misplaced to a degree. You know, people nowadays can't do nothing about the fact that they made Jesus white. You know, your pastor can't do nothing about that. But you have a right to question how in what other ways has this all been manipulated, and if we can identify those ways, how can we reverse it? So yeah, that's just something to think about. This white Jesus, a painter who he was famous for advertising. He came up with this, and it works. And it also helped white people to continue doing the things that they were doing, because you know people was associating now whiteness with God. That black folks were like, we don't look like that. You know, that look like my master. So these people must be, you know, they must be greater, superior to me. So that allowed white folks to get away with, white folks back then. I'm not going to keep saying back then. Y'all know I mean back then. It gave them a way to get away with and to justify a lot of the things that they were doing. We've talked about that in previous streams, especially the beginning, the earliest one maybe, about how like people were even trying to make race a thing, how race became a thing, how race was literally made up. It didn't exist until folks were trying to justify slavery with the Bible. That's when the racial construct was made. But anyway, I've spent way too much on that part. I want to move on so we can really get into the minstrel shows and some of the other things that I want to talk about. So around the 1820s, there was a change in the way Black people wanted to identify themselves. And I think even now, this is kind of, it's a tough one. And I've had someone that asked me, well, do you identify as Black or do you identify as African American? So in the 1820s, because of this movement to send Black folks back to Africa, Black people no longer wanted to be called African, because if they didn't want to go back to Africa, they were afraid that they would actually give whoever, you know, the powerful people, give them a reason to take them back. So they stopped going by African Americans. They stopped going by that. Hey, Candice said, let me get this book. Yes, y'all, get this book. Please get this book. There is about 7 chapters per section. I think 35 chapters in total. And we're just in chapter 13 now, almost in chapter 13. So we got a little minute to go, but you definitely have time to get the book and join us. Yeah, so there was a switch in the way that Black people wanted to be addressed. And it just made me feel like, as Black people, we have constantly been in a state of having an identity crisis. You know, like they had it back then, but we even are dealing with it now in a different way. Like they were removed from their home. They were put into slavery. And, you know, now they have new names and their family is gone. And now their savior looks white. So it was this identity crisis. And then to go from being enslaved and now you're free, and to be told that you have to go to Africa and be afraid to have to identify as African American. It's just this constant mental, emotional quest for who am I really? Where do I belong? And I think that has trickled down in some ways to our generation, to my generation. I'm a millennial. I feel like that has trickled down in some ways with even the way we choose to identify ourselves, and how now you have some folks who they don't want to be called a person of color. And I kind of am moving toward that. Not that I have an issue with being called a person of color, but if it's something for Black folks, if it's something specifically for Black, it needs to be called that. Because now you have a different thing going on with the government where you can look at Black Lives Matter and how the money that was raised was sent to other organizations for other causes. Now we're seeing that when we're put into that group of people of color, when it really should be specific for us, we may not benefit from it, and thus we're still in the same place. So all of this stuff matters. Like, it may not seem like a big deal, but it's really significant, and it matters to know this and to understand what could really happen if we don't go about the things we say and what we do, and even down to how we identify if we don't go about this the right way. So this, now that you have people who are saying, wait, I'm not African American, I'm Black, and you also had the darker skinned Black people were referred to as Negroes, and the lighter skinned people preferred to be called colored. So you had like groups of people trying to distinguish themselves to get as far away from African as possible. And if y'all remember, I went over this concept. I try to go over it every stream, but there's this concept called uplift suasion. And basically the concept is centered around that if Black folks want white people to accept them and to no longer be racist, we have to act a certain way. We have to do certain things. We have to, our lives are measured by what white people deem approvable. And again, I'm paraphrasing it. Go watch the other streams for the definition. But as you can see, that doesn't work. It doesn't matter, because racism is not about a behavior. It's about a belief and a mindset. So no matter how I act, what I do, what I achieve, I'm still Black. What rapper says like you still a nigga in a coupe? Like, you know, like even celebrities, you Black. So uplift suasion does not work. And so no matter like what we do to try to distance ourselves from Blackness, now we have consumed those racist ideas about Black people ourselves. We've consumed it, and now we're perpetuating, and it's not going to work. That's not going to help. And if it would have, we wouldn't be where we are now. You get what I'm saying? So I hope y'all are liking this video so far. If you haven't already, give me a thumbs up, like it, share it with your audience. Yes, it was Kanye. I thought it was Kanye that said that. But go ahead, share this video with your audience. Continue to comment. It helps more people see and amplifies the conversation. So I would really appreciate it if you all do that. So moving on, now at this point, we have the first Black newspaper. There's something like to be really happy about, really proud of the fact that our people have gotten through slavery, some of them, most of them, and now they're starting newspapers. But there was a problem. You remember last stream, it be your own people, and how Black people who were biracial were in many ways a threat. Well, the first Black newspaper was founded by two biracial Black men, or biracial men. And the beliefs of the paper were grounded in the concept of uplift suasion that I just explained that did not work. So this paper was telling people, you know, you need to get married, get a job, wear your clothes like this. It is our job to uplift ourselves, because white people are not going to appreciate and care about us if we don't ourselves. And that's really like, that don't work, again, because Black people didn't do nothing. They didn't do anything at all. So how can you prove something to someone? How can you say that you have to prove yourself when you didn't even do anything? They had this belief about you in the first place. That's why the book is titled Stamped from the Beginning. It's nothing Black people can do to change a racist mind. That racist mind has to work that out themselves. So it's not our job to do that. You know, for those of us like me who I care and I want to see all people live in harmony and us get along. I don't mind, extending myself a little more than I want to sometimes to have these conversations. But at the end of the day, Black people, we don't have to do nothing. It's not our job to make take the racism out of a white person or a Black person for that matter. That's something that they're going to have to do. So I want to encourage you not to take on that belief, because I've had that belief, especially when, I mentioned I was attending a church that was multiracial, and I'm pregnant and unmarried, and I'm like, oh, the white folks gonna be looking at me like this, and they already think this are black women, and I'm in some Black folks that, I'm just like, I'm already Black now, I'm pregnant, I ain't married, my baby daddy got dreads, I'm just thinking like all the ways that these people may view me, and it's like if that all that matters, that ain't you, right? That's them. That's their problem, not yours. So I want to encourage you to think about how uplift suasion may show up in your everyday life. Sorry, my throat is getting dry. And in my opinion, I believe that uplift suasion was the doom of the Black community, honestly. I feel like that's what, how it's very hard for us to be on code and to be on one accord, and how like we're the only race that argue online in public. We got our business out in the streets. That a lot of that is because of uplift suasion, and because we've consumed it. You have to think about it. If you have, as soon as Black folks are free, as soon as the enslaved have become free, they are told to pattern every aspect of their lives off of whether or not white people would approve of it. If that was what was drilled into their heads as soon as they got off the plantation, that is what everybody after them are gonna do. That's what everybody after them, everybody to come, that's the mentality that they're going to take on. And that's how you have now. And I wanted to bring up the Housewives of Potomac. If you watch the Housewives of Potomac, put a heart emoji in the chat if you watch the Housewives of Potomac. Y'all remember, like, the main issue with the Housewives of Potomac this season was the fight between Monique and Candace. And you remember when the fight happened, they were like, they were getting separated, and Candace goes, "You hood rat ghetto, this and this." And then they have this meeting with Monique to tell her, Black women, we have to hold up a standard, and we have to do this. Y'all remember that? And how a lot of people was like, hold on now. These white women be fighting. Teresa flipped over a table. So why are y'all having these kumbaya meetings with Monique? Like, the whole perspective or the whole viewpoint of Black women is squarely on her shoulders and on y'all's shoulders. That's an example of uplift suasion, where the white people on the same network literally did worse than what happened, but y'all are the ones being lectured about your behavior. This uplift suasion, basically saying, if we don't fight, they won't have a reason to call Black women this, and this. No, that ain't got nothing to do with whether or not you fight. That's uplift suasion. It doesn't work. So yeah, let me keep going. But yeah, I feel like that's what doomed our community, and uplift suasion is what would forever cause us to be divided, because a lot of people just have internalized these things. A lot of Black folks think they better because they live in certain neighborhoods, or because they married to a white person, or because they got white clientele, and they're not just serving Black people, that's uplift suasion. And that is why we just can't get on the same page about certain things, because some of us still hold those beliefs. And I ain't gonna lie, I held them in some areas, but as I learn more, as I'm going through this book, as I'm growing, I am abandoning that with full confidence that you will take me as I am. I'm gonna walk in my brilliance as a melanated person. I'm not going to base my worth, my future, the opportunities that I could get. I'm not gonna base it around whether or not white people become my clients or whether or not white people are my customers. I'm not gonna get excited for that. They don't excite me because my life is not based on their standard of measurement. You get what I'm saying? But you have a lot of people who don't think like that and who probably never will because they too deep off in it to even see that they have consumed anti-Black racist ideas, and it's really a form of self-hate if you unpack it all. Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot. So moving on to chapter 13, on page 167, there was, I cannot pronounce this name, but like I said, it's on page 167. There was a Frenchman who wrote a political science book. And in the book, he described racist ideas as a cycle that made persuading or educating racist ideas away nearly impossible. So as you can see, or as you can read, as you can hear, even as we're talking about what goes on now in modern day, racism is almost too bad and too ingrained in our culture for us to do away with it. Nothing's impossible. Nothing is impossible. Anything can change. But you don't even have people who are really interested in having these conversations. They're not interested because it's not entertaining enough. It's boring. They don't want to sit down and read. They don't care about the history. They think the history is irrelevant. And all these things, like, we're never going to do away with this. And a month ago, like when I was really in a bad place, not a bad place, but a very emotional place about all of this, I was like, oh my God, like, it's going to be like this forever. You know, I had to accept that reality. But now I'm more like, listen, I done tried everything else. Now I can just do me. You know, like, I know that this is what is going on. I can create my own environment, my own relationship with God. I don't have to necessarily go to a church where I know this is there and ain't nobody gonna do nothing about it, and they not gonna do nothing about it themselves. And I don't have to be there. I can make my own I can have my own Sunday experience. I can connect with God in a way that's personal for me. I can go, I don't have to spend all my energy protesting police brutality and injustice and stuff. I can just continue to educate and talk about it and, you know, do my own thing. I can do something that's gonna be effective in the end. I can start a food program. I can do a community cleanup in bad neighborhoods. It just coming to terms with the reality that this is probably not going to go anywhere. It's 99% not going to go away. You know, that just inspired me to do what I can do. Because it's like, why spend energy trying to beg somebody to see my worth or see the worth of my people? I can just do what I need to do and create my own, establish my own, independent of all of that. So again, that's why I'm here, because I got the confidence and the empowerment to be able to do that. And I just want to keep encouraging y'all to do the same thing and to figure out your place and to figure out what it is that you can contribute so that you can do the same. But they said it back in 1835 that racist ideas the cycle of it was so vicious that to do away with it was probably going to be impossible. They said that in 1835, it's 2020. Just saying. So the next, this chapter is in the section about William Lloyd Garrison. He was an abolitionist. He favored gradual equality for blacks, like to make black people gradually equal to white people. And so it's interesting how like we grew up thinking about or grew up knowing William Lloyd Garrison and how he was this great person, and he wanted black people to be free from slavery, but he really had a lot of problematic theories, and he was really an assimilationist who wanted black people to kind of blend in. He believed in uplift suasion, wanted them to do what white popular culture was doing and persuading them to make white people view them differently. And that's problematic to be teaching kids about him, you know, knowing that he was an assimilationist. And it's interesting also that elite black activists invited him to speak. So you see that there's a correlation between elite blacks and anti-blackness that doesn't look like it on its face. But when you begin to undo like the image, and when you begin to not be starstruck or impressed, if you would not be easily impressed, you'll see the anti-blackness in elite black folks, and even especially black people in mainstream media. A lot of the mainstream black media figures are very elitist and they're assimilationist, you know, when you break it all down. And I just thought that was interesting that that's what we gravitate toward, and it just goes to show how deep uplift suasion and all these things, how deeply they impacted us. So moving on, I'm trying to go a little quicker. We get into housing discrimination in the 1830s. There was Nigger Hill in Boston. There was what they called an area of Boston where 44% of black people lived. By the end of the Civil War, it came an end point for the Underground Railroad, but they called that Beacon Hill neighborhood of Boston Nigger Hill. And then you have Little Africa in Cincinnati. It was also a point of entry for the Underground Railroad. There was 5 Points in New York. And so what you saw with the housing discrimination is these racist policies harmed black neighborhoods. That's how you got like Flint, even today now. And European immigrants amplified housing discrimination because they were not black. So they didn't have to be cordoned off, for lack of a better word, into a neighborhood. And it made me think about like how I look at neighborhoods and how I figure out where I want to live and stuff. And it's this push and pull between like, oh, I want to be safe, and being careful not to associate a neighborhood and its people being bad without really looking at the neglect maybe that the neglect of the city to take care of that neighborhood, that is not always the people. Most of the time it's not the people, it's the system behind it. And even in a, like Jackson, even in a, our mayor is black, but certain areas of our city is highly neglected. I mean, they look like wastelands and nobody really wants to live out there. But you have, you know, this is in majority black areas. And so all of these stuff, I just hope y'all see the dots, that they're all connected. It's 54 minutes. I got something to do at 3, but I want to keep going. I really want to get into the minstrel shows. I gotta at least touch on it because I put it in the thumbnail and it's in the title. If you know anything about a minstrel show, let me know in the comments if you know what they are. I'm sure everybody heard of everyone has heard of blackface, blackface came about during minstrel shows. So I'm gonna show you a short clip from a minstrel show. I want to pick a good one that's not too long. Okay, I'll do this one.
Now, to quiet people, Cotton Watts and Chick.
Yeah, okay.
Let that be a lesson to you.
What's the matter with you boys shooting up that man's hen house?
I'll shoot any chicken trying to follow me home.
Well, why don't you get a job and go to work?
You almost had me a job this morning.
Where?
I went down to the post office and that man couldn't let me have one of them jobs as a letter told him.
No, Cotton, you mean a mail carrier.
When the man said, boy, he could give me a situation, he'd have to put me through a simple self-examination.
No, stupid. You mean a civil service examination.
Well, the man carried me in a little room and set me down and started asking me a gang of questions.
Well, what did he ask you?
First thing the man asked me, said, how far is it from the sun to the moon?
He asked you how far it was from the sun to the moon?
Yeah, that's what the man asked me.
Well, what'd you tell him?
I told him he was going to give me that route. I didn't want to do.
Now, tell me, how would you like to go to work for me?
Yes, ma'am. How much you going to pay me, I hope?
Well, let's see now. I'll pay you all your work.
No, ma'am. I got to have some money.
You know,
Okay, that's enough of that. So y'all see in the minstrel shows, that's actually a white man dressed in blackface, pretending to be a black man. And you can tell, like, some of the characteristics from minstrel shows, aside from the blackface, was that they talked with a slurring. You hear how he's speaking? I'm going to play some of it again so you can hear his speech.
I'm making a picture called The Lion Tamer.
The lion tamer? There ain't but one kind of lion I'll mess with.
What kind's that?
Ooh, that's what that...
So you hear, like, that was how they depicted black folks. Instead of having actual black actors play these roles, they had white people to dress in blackface. And it was the first actual art form in America. It was the first American art, you know, film-wise, movie-wise, Hollywood-wise, to come out of America. And they were depicting black folks in this way. Now, a lot of people make modern day connections to like mumble rap and how like some of your black celebrities rise to fame and the different things that they do. Some people make those connections from black minstrel shows, but this was a very, very popular art form back in those times in the this was around the 1830s, I believe. Let me just double check. Yeah, it was in the mid to late 1800s. And you know what's interesting about the minstrel shows is that it just looked creepy to me. Like, who would want to sit in? And that's just it's very, very creepy. But these white actors who were participating in this, they rose to international stardom doing this. This is also where you get the stereotypes of mammies. If you've ever heard of a mammy and why it's derogatory to refer to someone as a mammy, that's where you get coon from. The coon in the minstrel show always mimicked white elite people. Minstrel shows showed African Americans as being happy with slavery, being happy on plantations. They made dark-skinned black women very masculine. I'm gonna pull up a video for that too, so y'all can see. It's in my history here. Okay, so here's one.
Need a professional logo for your brand? I've used the new Wix logo maker to create one for my startup. I'll show you how.
Okay, so let me pause it here. You see how they call this area lazy town? There was another stereotype of Black people back in those times. See, this is from 1941. Oh my goodness, that was not that long ago. But and I've talked about this before, folks who purchased and sold human beings to do their work on their plantations called those human beings lazy. Make it make sense. You can see here, Lazy Town Laundry, they depicted Black people as lazy. You can see the tattered home, the shack. That is how they depicted Black people, Black neighborhoods. I just wanted to point that out. Also, you see here, there is the exaggerated lips, basically depicting Black people who had fuller lips. They exaggerated like this in the cartoons, and it's so funny. Like, again, all this stuff still it shows up today. They're showing the lips, they're exaggerating them, but then you have Kylie Jenner and other white women. Most white women get lip fillers. You see like how we have always been picked apart, disrespected, mistreated, that been violent toward us, stereotyped, all of these things just for those same things to be praised and sought out after in white folks or people that are non-Black. Just wanted to point that out, and hopefully it's going to get to the mammy soon. Let me try to, oh, here it is. Okay.
1 hour stop for lunch.
Listen, Mammy, there ain't nowhere to wash clothes. What you all need is nothing.
What do you want me, really?
Okay, so you can see here how the lighter skinned woman is shown as sexy, and she actually looks like a woman, whereas the mammy is dark skinned and with the same exaggerated features as the men, and she is not feminine. They have her sounding like a man.
What you all need is nothing.
What do you want me, really?
So these cartoons were very prevalent. That one was banned eventually, but these type of cartoons were very prevalent. And you have to remember that there are kids growing up in these times, and those children are learning from these cartoons. And in some of the accounts by real slaves, in one of the books that was written with actual slave accounts of their time in slavery, some of them would say that white children would play master or overseer with enslaved Black children. So could you imagine the type of how that would shape a white person's view of themselves, and how we in a Black community, we always joke about like mediocre white folks and Black people having to achieve all that part of uplift suasion. As children, they were playing like they were the masters and overseers of Black children. So that is how these ideas get carried. Racism is taught. It's taught, it's passed on. That's why it's generational. So if I'm a child and I'm playing master over all the Black enslaved children, I already know that they're different. I know that they're slaves. How do you think that's gonna make me feel about myself as I grow up, as I come of age? And then you have the mammies, like in the help of, I think it was Viola's character. She's, telling the white girl, you is kind, you is smart, you is, like stroking these white children. And that is how, that is why you have a lot of what we have going on today. I'm going to stop here. I've been on for over an hour, and I keep getting calls, and I gotta be somewhere in 30 minutes. So I'm gonna stop here. We'll pick up with Nat Turner. But hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Hopefully you learned something new. I think I'm gonna do a separate video on minstrel shows, and these cartoons and stuff like that. I don't know yet, but I think I'm gonna do a separate video on it. But thank y'all for watching. Please, again, like this video, share it with your followers, share it with your audience. Go back and watch the beginning if you're just tuning in. Watch some earlier streams too. But yeah, I'll see y'all again tomorrow, hopefully, for the continuation of chapter 13 and maybe up until like chapter 17. I'm trying to speed this up because I really want to get into the next book in January, at least by the middle of January. So I'm going to be doing these every day around 1 o'clock, maybe a little bit sooner, a little bit after. So just stay tuned for tomorrow's discussion. Again, we'll pick up with Nat Turner. And I guess that's it. Thank y'all for watching. I'll see y'all